Most people think the gym's where they're burning the most calories. They go for a run, whether it's outside or on a treadmill, smashing some cardio out. They burn the 400 calories because that's what it says on their watch. And then they go home and eat a little bit more as a reward. But here's the thing, that 400 calories, which is probably inaccurate, actually plays the smallest role in your total energy expenditure over the day. And today I'm just going to show you exactly where your calories go. And it may just change the way that you approach fat loss going forward. So you've got something called TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure. It's everything your body burns throughout the course of a day. And it's actually made up of 4 components, but most people only focus on one of those components. And let's go through each one from the biggest to the smallest. So first and foremost, the biggest contributor to your total daily caloric burn is your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. Ultimately, how many calories you burn at rest. So doing nothing. If I was to lie on this couch for 24 hours, I would still use energy to stay alive. So for all of my brain function, my heart function, my lung function, and all the other functions that go on to keep us alive, that is the biggest contributor to your total caloric burn throughout a day. Mine sits somewhere around 1800 calories. So I burn approximately 1800 calories doing naff all, apart from just living, surviving. And as a percentage, it's going to be around 60 to 70% of your total caloric burn throughout the day. So it is the biggest hitter when it comes to your caloric burn. And as I spoke about in a previous video, there are ways to increase your BMR and your metabolism, and one of the most effective ways is to have strength training, because the more lean muscle mass we have, the more calories we burn at rest, because it requires more energy to maintain those muscles. They're more metabolically active than fat. So do some strength training, lift some weights. The more lean mass you have, the more calories you burn at rest. And as a result, this is why some of the extreme approaches that can be taken to facilitate fat loss actually work against the very thing you're trying to achieve, because your BMR will adapt to the energy it's given. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. What I'm saying is, for an extended period of time where you are in a very aggressive fat loss approach, your metabolism adapts accordingly. So you then end up burning less calories at rest because it doesn't have the available calories to burn. Simple when you think about it that way. The next and second biggest contributor is your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically everything you do throughout the day, every movement, every time you move your arms. If you're quite a animated speaker, it's standing up, it's sitting down, it's walking upstairs, it's having a walk, it's all the activity you do throughout the normal day. So your non-exercise activity. And this accounts for the second largest amount of calories burnt throughout your day. And throughout the day, all of these movements can add up, and it's often one that is either dismissed or missed out altogether. And one of the reasons I work with my clients to make sure we have activity targets throughout the day. It's also the biggest variable component of total caloric burn based on individuals. You could have 2 people of exactly the same size, exactly the same weight, and of the same sex who have vastly different NEAT energy requirements. One could be a manual labourer, and one could be sat at a desk all day. Vastly different caloric burn from those 2 individuals. So it is the one that it can't be generalized because it is so specific on the activity of the individual. There's also a well-documented phenomenon called NEAT compensation, where people who do structured exercise unconsciously move less throughout their day. So actually exercise could impact negatively on your total caloric burn, let alone being last on the list, but we'll come to that. And that's one of the reasons that cardio, for example, burns less net calories than people actually think, because you have to then deduct the number of calories you're not going to burn through the post-workout inactivity. So to focus on NEAT is paramount, because it's one of the things you have the biggest control over. Making sure you're moving enough on a day-to-day basis. Parking the car further away from where you need to be so you get an extra couple of hundred steps in. Taking the stairs instead of getting in a lift. Breaking away from your desk. One of the tips I've worked with my clients who do have sedentary job roles is finding a block of time at the end of the day or at the start of the day to go off and do, let's say 5,000 steps, for example, can be really, really difficult. But what is more reasonable is breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So when I used to work at the NHS, I used to work as a health and wellbeing coach, and I was seeing patients throughout the course of the day. And I would have 2 patients at a back to back. Then I'd normally get around 15 minutes to write up notes before my next 2 patients came in. So what I did was I used 5 minutes of that allotted time to stand up and go for a walk. 5 minutes walking was just under 1,000 steps. Now, if I did that, and I did, every hour that I was at work, I was walking out of work with an additional 6,000 or 7,000 steps that I otherwise wouldn't have got in. So try not to think of it as one big picture. Try and break it down into something you can actually achieve, and just set an alarm on your watch or your phone to break you away from the computer screen that we are constantly seemingly attached to for a lot of people, and just standing up. And even if you take a phone call, a work call, and stand up and just walk on the spot or walk around the room, that's still activity that you don't appreciate has much of an impact. But if you did that all day, every day, it's going to have a huge benefit to the number of calories burnt throughout a total day over time. Next, we've got TEF, which is the thermic effect of food. So your body requires energy to digest food. So not all of the calories you consume are actually absorbed by the body. They're used in the digestion process. And we know that the biggest contributor to TEF is your proteins. They are the most complex of all the macronutrients, and it takes longer to break them down. So we feel fuller for longer, and we burn more calories digesting it. Numbers suggest that we would burn approximately 30% of the calories we consume through protein in the digestive process. So when it comes to fat loss, eat more protein, not because it's going to help with keeping your muscle mass and help with your strength and recovery and repair, and also has implications on your bone health, but simply because you don't absorb as many calories off protein. When you look at something like carbohydrates, they're anywhere from around 10%. So 10% of the calories from a carbohydrate, slightly less if it's a simple carbohydrate. So something like your white breads, your crisps, things like that, because actually it doesn't take very long or much effort to break those down in the digestive system. But something more like a complex carb, which has generally got like a fiber molecule attached to it, that's going to take slightly longer to break down. So around 10% of your carbohydrates is used, so you absorb 90% of the calories from a carbohydrate. So when we look at fats, finally, they're about 0 to 5% of the calories are consumed in the digestive process. So they are the highest, so fats are 9 calories per gram, but they are also the easiest to metabolize, so you absorb 95% or more of the calories from a fat. On its own, TEF doesn't play a huge role, but stacked on top of everything else, So improving your BMR through creating more lean muscle mass, making sure you're moving enough throughout the day, fidgeting, standing up, walking further through your NEAT, and also paying attention to the thermic effect of food. They're the three biggest contributors combined to your total caloric burn throughout the day. Then we have, lastly, structured exercise, the one that everybody focuses on. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I need to lose fat, so I'm going to start eating more protein and I'm going to park the car further away. What I do hear is, I need to get to the gym, I need to start going for a run, I need to start doing all of these extracurricular things that actually play the smallest role in your fat loss. So this is where I'm trying to flip your mindset on its head about what actually matters for fat loss as far as your total caloric burn is concerned. Now, I am not saying that structured exercise isn't important. It is hugely important for numerous and arguably endless reasons. But when it comes specifically to fat loss, it plays the smallest role. So when it comes to your heart health, lung health, mental health, physical health, joint stability, joint strength, flexibility, hugely important. Hugely. And I'm not saying that I don't think you should do structured exercise. Every one of my clients gets strength training and cardio protocols built into their programs. However, if you miss a session, you can still lose fat. I currently am struggling with my structured exercise because my back's gone and I've got MRIs and all sorts to come. I'll not bore you with the details, but I can still lose fat because I can still continue to move more and still continue to eat less and prioritize my sleep and my hydration and my general self-care so that I can still lose fat without having to do structured exercise. Now, I still do some form of structured exercise, but I don't exercise for fat loss. I exercise for all the other benefits and mainly my mental health, if I'm totally honest. So if we look at numbers, something like a moderate run. So let's say a 3K run, 5K. Let's go 5K, approximately 3 miles. You might burn 300 to 600 calories in that time, which is great. Well done. But as we already have discussed, that phenomenon, phenomenon, I digress. That phenomenon of post-exercise inactivity is very much a real thing. So that 300 to 600 calories, which is a best guess from a smartwatch, which we've already discussed is inaccurate, but at least it's a ballpark. You then move less throughout the rest of your day, so we can probably knock off another 250 to 300 calories from that. So actually, you probably only net 150 calories from that cardio session. And I'll put it to strength as well for the calories burnt during a strength session. I have discussed, obviously, in the other videos about strength actually raising your metabolism for longer as it repairs the damage you do to it post-session for up to 48 hours after. So you will burn more calories post-strength training over a 24-hour period, but we can still offset some of that with the number of calories you won't achieve because you'll generally move less post-workout. But it's more prevalent in cardio than it is strength training, just saying. So what does this all mean? What's the takeaway? What do I want you to walk away with from this? Because I'm aware that this could be demotivating if I don't frame it quite right. This isn't an argument to stop exercising. Absolutely not. It's an argument to stop making formal exercise the entire basis of your fat loss strategy. If you want to meaningfully increase your TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure, protect your BMR so you don't crash diet, you make sure you eat adequate protein, you do some form of strength training, and that all keeps your metabolic rate as high as we can get it. You need to maximize your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, by basically moving more throughout the day and breaking those periods or elongated periods of being sedentary. Eat more protein because it takes the longest to digest, so it burns more calories, so you don't absorb as many. And use exercise for what it's best at, which is to grow in strength, to change body composition, to increase flexibility and joint stability, to improve mental health, social health, physical health, to improve heart and lung function, to feel better about yourself. But don't use it for fat loss. The ones that get rid of fat and keep that fat off aren't the one that are doing 2 hours of cardio every single day and inevitably leading to burnout. They're the ones that have addressed these other more important elements into their lifestyle. So they do some form of strength training. They do try and be as active as they can be throughout a day. They do look at their nutrition and prioritize protein with their meals. They're the things that add to that sustainability of any progress that you make over time. And they're the ones that are the key components that you should be focusing on first and foremost throughout your journey, but also forever. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, and if you've got any questions, just ask.